Now and again you'll find yourself in a situation where you have to go backwards, either to a water point or because you've reached a dead end, or in my case I've just loaded with coal and instead of travelling for 2 hours to the next winding point, turning around and coming back, it was just quicker to reverse to the nearest winding point downstream. Some people say you can't reverse a narrowboat, and I hope that with these tips and tricks that I'll be describing today that it'll help you in your own quest to learn this skill, for it definitely is something that you have to practice. You join me at a point where we've just come round the corner and there is limited steering when you're going backwards, so every now and again you have to go in forwards, use the thrust of the water against the rudder to move the boat into a new attitude where you can start reversing again. Now you might have noticed that instead of lining the boat to the canal, I've slightly got the stern further to the right than you would expect. This is due to something called prop walk, where the propeller acts more as a paddle wheel than a propeller. There is some small difference in water pressure top and bottom of the propeller, and what happens is that the propeller will walk itself sideways, taking the boat with it. It's important to know which way your propeller turns so that you can counter this effect. Mine is a right-handed prop, which means that it turns clockwise when going forward, and when going astern it goes anti-clockwise, and so it pulls the stern of the boat to the left. And because boats pivot more or less on the centre, it means that the front then goes to the right and you're pointing in a different direction. One of the tricks is to also try and get up a bit of speed fairly quickly. You'll notice that I'm revving quite hard to get the boat moving, but once I've got the boat moving, you're actually better off reducing the revs. This helps limit the amount of prop walk, and you can actually use the prop walk to help control and direct the boat along with the effect that you'll get with the tiller. The effect of the rudder is greatly reduced in reverse because you don't have the flow of water from the propeller across it, and you're holding the tiller in the opposite direction to what you would do normally. Here I'm having to make another correction, and you'd be surprised at just how difficult it is to stop the boat moving when you're holding the rudder hard over, because a lot of the water is going sideways instead of backwards. So the idea is that you're not actually stopping the boat from going backwards, you're just straightening it up again. Doesn't always work, and usually by the time you've got yourself straight you're nearly stopped anyway. But one of the tricks to making it smoother and easier is to actually do it in small bursts so that you don't stop, and so that you've always got that reverse momentum. It means that when you accelerate again, the prop walk is reduced. One of the less intuitive things about reversing a boat is that you need to look forwards more than you look backwards. The only way you can tell in which direction the boat is pointing is by looking along the length of it. However, don't forget to look backwards, because you might be heading towards something you don't want to. Sometimes you're going to get yourself close to another boat, and you're going to have to decide whether it's better to reposition the boat, or in this case, pushing off the boat made the most sense. Now you have to be careful here. You're best doing it without the engine in gear in case you fall in, although if you do fall in, you're more likely to get squashed by the boat rather than mangled by the propeller. I usually find it's easier to stand on the other boat and push mine away. I can hold on to the handrails of Victoria, which are more secure and easier to hold on to than other boats. Having boats both sides is the worst possible scenario. Here you can see how as I accelerate the boat straightens up. One of the biggest issues in reversing is that the boat is going into your own disturbed water. The propeller will throw water about, especially when you're manoeuvring to straighten the boat up. You'll often start up eddies of water that will push and pull the boat around as you start going backwards again. And these will generally pull you into the shallows. Once you've got the boat balanced and going straight, it's like steering on a knife edge, and you've got to watch that fore end. As soon as it starts moving, correct it, and once it's on that knife edge balance, you'll see as soon as you move it, the front moves, and then find that neutral point again where there's less left or right pull on the tiller. One of the other important things to remember when you're reversing is not to stand in the arc of the tiller. If the rudder was to hit anything, the tiller would swing wildly, throw you over the back of the boat, and the boat would then run you over, probably chewing you up in the propeller. So please don't do this. Once you've found the balance point and there's no other external forces, you can reverse quite a long distance this way, and I've reversed miles before now. Once when I was reversing my dad's pleasure boat, somebody actually asked us to slow down as we passed them. However, going slow does reduce the amount of steerage you have, so you have to have that careful balance. However, when you're going astern, you don't pull the water about in the same way as you do going forwards. Sometimes you just have to trust in your abilities. You think that, oh, I'm getting close, oh, I'm not going to make this. And over time, you'll learn what you can and can't get away with. Here, I've just managed to avoid this boat. Had it been a private pleasure boat, I may have pushed away or made a repositioning manoeuvre before I got too close. In situations where it's less of an issue, for example, a work boat, for example, or the bank, or where the edge or the boat is well fended, you can actually just allow it to gently rub along the side. And here I was worried that the fore end might swing round and hit the boat, but I could see it had a big fender on the front that if I needed to, I could have used to effectively bounce away again. Steering round corners is a bit of an art when you're reversing. Normally you don't really think about it until you reach the corner, but when reversing you actually have to start the turn early, otherwise the back of the boat will be in the wrong place. So here I've started turning the boat well before I needed to. It does mean that the front of the boat gets close to these other boats, but because I'm reversing away, because the stern is well positioned, I know it's going to pull me further and further away from them boats. One of the other issues when you're reversing is not stalling the rudder. Here, when I push it right across, it's not actually providing any major steering. You've got to find that sweet spot where the maximum effect is gained. You'll sometimes find yourself heading towards the bank, as in here. Normally I would correct this, but I just wanted to show that the curved chines on Victoria actually helps push the boat away from the bank, and you can sometimes use that effect to push you in the right direction again. Unfortunately, one of the biggest issues is that you get bank effect, the water running between the boat and the bank. pulls the front of the boat towards the bank, and as you can see here, the bow has taken a sudden turn straight towards the bank. You think, oh, well that's good, I'm heading in the right direction to pull away from the bank. But what happens is the suction just holds the front on the bank and you end up going sideways. If you've got the space on a big river, this is a good way of turning around, especially if the prop walk is helping you. So now that my stern is in deep water again, I'm going to do a bit of manoeuvring to try and straighten the boat out. The only way to stop the front from being sucked to the bank is to stop the boat from moving. And because once you've done that, you're still only halfway across the canal, it's very difficult to get that front out unless you go out and pole it. So what I'm going to do here is a trick I use for getting out of moorings. So I'm going to push the stern right across to the other side of the canal, and once it's on that other side, I can then swing the stern back to the centre of the canal, and the front of the boat swings the opposite direction, also into the centre of the canal. Again, once you're happy with the positioning of the boat, you can go backwards again, put the boat astern and accelerate. As I've said before, I try and get the boat moving as quickly as possible. I also try and make sure that the boat isn't pointing directly in the direction I want to travel, but with the forend slightly to the left and the stern slightly to the right is actually better. So that when I reverse the prop walk, it will pull the stern around. However, here it's not working quite as well as I hoped, so I'm having to give it another bust ahead to pull us around. One of the tricks is to try and keep out the shallows where possible, because it makes it much harder to control the vessel in shallow waters. One of the things I would try first, if you're new to reversing a boat, is to do it on deeper waters like a large river and get used to controlling the boat in reverse without these other shallow water effects. Reversing round corners is obviously much harder, and especially where there are stains. Sometimes even professionals want to take it steady and slow like I am here, and the trick is not to panic too much. When it's windy, you sometimes have to do things within a timely manner, but always consider the future and how any external effects are going to affect the boat, and try and put that into the attitude of the boat first. Sometimes when you start getting close to other boats, you just have to YOLO it. Of course, it didn't really matter if I hit that work boat. It wasn't going to affect the tow, and it wasn't going to affect the boat. And because I was winding, I wanted the stern to move towards the bank. This is the site of what was known by the boatmen as the stink hole. It's Colne Valley Sewage Works, and coal was brought down from the Warwickshire coalfields to operate it. Here I'm not so much winding as using the water to pull the boat around, but you'll also see that there's still some momentum of the front of the boat that's helping pull it around. I hope that you've enjoyed seeing some of the things that go into reversing a narrowboat, and hopefully it will give you more confidence when you come to do it yourself. If you have any more questions, tips, tricks, anything that you'd like to mention, please put it in the comments. And as always, please, if you liked it, like, and if you enjoy more of this content, subscribe.